Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. It's about that time of the season where we start talking about Browns players who, unfortunately, we're going to have to get up out of there. There's a lot of players, a lot of people have a lot of opinions about if they'll be here long term, if they'll be here after this season. Let's talk about it. I got 4 categories of players, right? I got players who maybe, like, they're on the block to get cut, but there's a larger conversation to have before you get rid of them. There are players I think that are likely to be moved, but it's not definite, right? Like, there's something that needs to happen in order for these players to be moved on from, because they don't have zero value. Then I have players who are definitely being cut. Like, the Browns are definitely moving on from them. The tea leaves are there. It just seems obvious that the Browns are likely moving on from these players here in this category. And then the last category I have is potential surprise camp cuts. Guys who are going to make the roster past June 1st. And maybe they might get cut after June 1st because it just makes more sense to let them go after June 1st for salary cap reasons. And also because you might not be sure about the replacement for these players. So let's jump into it. We're going to start with the players who I think maybe will be gone in 2024. Joe Bitonio. Now, he's not going to get cut. He's going to be allowed to retire as a Brown. The question is, will he retire this offseason? I think it would benefit Joe Bitonio to retire this offseason. It would benefit the Cleveland Browns to retire this offseason for Joe Bitonio, because Joel has not been the effective player that he once was. Joel is no longer a fit for what the Cleveland Browns are trying to do in the run game. Right, we're trying to move the ball in the shotgun. We're trying to do more guard, center, guard, man blocking run concepts instead of those wide zones where we're pulling guys and getting out on the edge. We just don't do that as much anymore. And quite frankly, Joe Bitonio just doesn't have it in him to pull and hit his targets on a consistent basis like he used to be able to do pretty easily. His pass blocking has dropped dramatically. His run blocking has dropped dramatically. Now, I don't think the Browns will do him the indignity of cutting him. But if I'm the Cleveland Browns, I need spots to open up on that offensive line immediately, right? In the interior is where it's most important. You want to look at center, you want to look at guard, and you want to look at tackle. But if Joe doesn't retire and he plays next year, out of respect, you probably going to give him that spot next year. And I don't know if that makes your team better. So Joe Bitonio may be gone because of retirement. Jack Conklin is the next guy I have here. Now, this is a bit more of a complicated conversation to have because Jack Conklin has not been terrible for the Cleveland Browns. You can even argue he's been the Browns' best offensive lineman. Unfortunately, this year, it's not saying too much, to say that Jack Conklin has been the best offensive lineman for the Cleveland Browns. But it does say something. He plays a scarce position, which is tackle, and he still has a year left on his contract. So if you need a tackle next year, you could just keep Jack Conklin. Now, there might be a situation where if you're the Browns and you feel like you can get Garrett Bowles or something like that for $18 million, and cutting Jack Conklin frees up 12, it might be worth the 6+ that you would gain in cap space lose in cap space to go after Garrett Bowles to upgrade one of the tackle positions, and then let DeJuan Jones, once he comes back from injury, hold down to whatever vacant tackle position is available. So that could be a strategy, right, where the Browns cut Jack Conklin and basically use the cap space that they'll save from cutting Jack Conklin, which I believe in 2025 after June 1st is around $15 million, and then use that as like kind of a discount or a way to kind of slide a new tackle in, because instead of it being like if you sign Garrett Bowles to $18 million for year one, instead of it being a cap hit of 18 and then you're just taking that on, you would lose 15 from cutting Jack Conklin, add 18, the difference would be about plus $3 million. And then you can structure the contract for Garrett Bowles in a way to where you just kind of evenly split, or maybe you even save money on the cap this year because you could put more of Garrett Bowles' money in the back end. So I can see a world where that happens, because if I'm the Browns, I understand that Jack Conklin has been one of your better tackles. It's just that he's not reliably healthy, and he's getting older and older. Now, granted, he's been pretty reliably healthy this year. Shockingly so, right? But that is a huge question with Jack Conklin. Also, the level of play is dipping. He is one of the few big, strong, like offensive linemen that you do have. So, like, he could do a lot of the shotgun run, a lot of man blocking stuff that you want to do going forward. And especially if you're not as keen on putting your tackles in space, I think that that's something that Jack Conklin, as he ages, will be able to do. The reliability is just where I get concerned. So I think that's going to be the big question. Do the Browns think they can get a real left tackle in the building for under 15 in cap space in that first year? If they feel like that's the case, then Jack Conklin's gone. If they don't feel like that's the case, then they might hang on to Jack for a little while, see what happens in the draft. And if they get a draft pick, like they get Kelvin Banks, they get Josh Simmons, and it look like Josh Simmons can take over one of the tackle positions, then you can put DeJuan Jones in the other, and then you would cut Jack Conklin in training camp or something like that, right? But that's Jack Conklin's future has a lot to do with what are the options available for the Cleveland Browns and how much do those options cost, or if you're able to get a certain player in the draft that you might covet for a tackle spot. Another player I have in maybe is Jerome Ford. I just don't think the Browns going forward see him as a great fit for what they want to do, right? The Browns are doing a lot of shotgun runs, and Jerome Ford is really good at getting to the edge, but they don't seem to want to do that as much anymore. And he's just hasn't been able to gain the weight physically that you would want him to gain to be able to play running back the way you need him to play running back in this offense. You cut him, you get like a couple million in cap space. I think that'd be worth it for him, especially this year where they're going to have a running back rich draft class. And the Browns have plenty of picks in the back end of this draft to go out and get a running back. Another guy I think is on the list of maybe gone after this year, DTR. I think we've reached close to our logical conclusion here. Now, he might get a chance in training camp to see what he could do. So maybe he gets one more preseason with the Browns to see if he develops. He seems to do very well in preseason. The problem with DTR is when he's put in position to be prepared for something, right? And I get the argument, he hasn't gotten a full week as a starter. Life in the NFL is as such. There are going to be times that you're going to have to play football when you didn't expect to play football, especially if you're a backup in this league. And I get the argument that, oh, DTR, he didn't get a chance to prepare before he came in to the Bengals game. I don't know how much I believe that, right? Because he was the backup all week. He knew that there was a chance that he could play. And apparently they were getting him ready because they made it clear to him, according to certain reports, that if Deshaun Watson did not play well, he was going to come in. So I don't buy the whole he was unprepared for the Cincinnati game and what happened in that one. And then you add on top of that Jameis Winston, who was the emergency quarterback in that game, came in and got a touchdown immediately. I just think the reality is he has some traits that intrigue you, but ultimately, at this point in his career, he ain't got it the way you need him to have it. Again, probably wait until training camp to do this, or maybe if you could bring in somebody in the draft and then you sign somebody in free agency, this just makes it so that you just let go of DTR. But quarterback position is going to be in flux. The quarterback room is going to be in flux. And DTR was brought in at a time where the Browns thought that Deshaun Watson was going to be the franchise quarterback. And he was brought in because they thought that he had the skill set to be Deshaun Watson's backup. Right? That's what he was brought in to be. Well, now we're not talking about who's going to be Deshaun Watson's backup anymore. We're talking about who's going to start for the Browns. That changes the conversation on DTR entirely, and it means that he's probably going to be moved on from at some point in the 2025 league year. Now let's go to our likely guys. Greg Newsome. is likely gone. Now, the only reason Greg Newsome isn't indefinitely gone is because you need to trade Greg Newsome. You can't cut Greg Newsome. You have to trade Greg Newsome, which means you have to have a partner for Greg Newsome, and you have to find compensation that you think is fair for Greg Newsome. If you find that, which I find to be likely, I think you'll likely find a partner for Greg Newsome, probably with the Chargers, maybe with the Houston Texans. Somebody's going to want him. You will trade him. You'll save like $13 million in cap space if you're the Browns. This makes a ton of sense. You have a surplus at corner. You're no longer in the class of teams thinks that can win the Super Bowl next year. Maybe you get to the playoffs next year or be a 10, 11 win team next year, but not a championship quality team, right? So having that surplus at corner, no longer really super effective. Let's move on from Greg Newsome, save the $13 million in cap space, and use that to kind of upgrade more on the line of scrimmage or at other positions where those upgrades might be more needed, like quarterback, right? So Greg Newsome, likely gone. Pierre Strong, if they draft more than one running back, he's up out of here. Like, it would make sense financially to move on from Pierre Strong. If that's the case, it would make sense from the play level on the field. Let's talk about guys who I think are definitely gone after this year. Jed Wills, up out of here, man. It's up over. It feels like the relationship between Jed Wills and the franchise is cooked. It feels like the relationship between Jed Wills and the local media is cooked. It seems like the relationship between Jed Wills and the fan base has been cooked. The level of play has not been defendable for the last year and a half, unfortunately for Jed Wills. The antics, right? The business decision quote, the whatever's going on with his knee injury right now when the Browns desperately need a tackle, he can't get healthy. Now, maybe he has a legitimate setback. Maybe he doesn't. This brings us all the way back to the weirdness that was him coming back from his knee injury at the beginning of the year, where he had complication after complication. You pair that with the business decision quote, and it feels like, yeah, Jed could play, but Jed don't want to play right now because he don't feel like he's 100% and he don't feel like getting ragged on Twitter. On top of all the other stuff that has made people furious about Jed Wills for the last couple of years, the stuff where he quits on plays, where he's standing there watching, all that stuff adds into a cabal that means that Jed Wills is absolutely not getting an extension this offseason. If it happens, I will be shocked. I'll be the first person to say, I'll be shocked. But Jed Wills coming back here, it don't seem like it's going to happen. I think we've probably seen the last time that we will ever see Jed Wills in a Cleveland Browns uniform whenever he played last. Like, once you decided to put DeJuan Jones at left tackle, when DeJuan Jones had been struggling at right tackle up until that point and was struggling with his weight all season, and you were like, you know what? That's better than playing Jed Wills. Once that decision was made, bro, you made the decision to move on from Jed Wills. So, Jed, that ain't happening. All right, let's go. The next one's definitely not coming back. Juan Thornhill. All the tea leaves are there. He ain't coming back. You got Ronnie Hickman you feel like can start. You're fine at free safety. If you don't have Juan Thornhill, it's pretty obvious to me Juan Thornhill's gone. Similar situation to Jed, even though he's not as egregious as Jedrick Wills. But, you know, same principle applies. He's not coming back. Let's talk about some guys who could be potential surprise camp cuts. Now, the reason these guys won't be cut at the start of the new league year, it's not financially beneficial to cut these guys before June 1st, right? Now, you could designate these guys as post-June 1st cuts and let them hit free agency earlier, and then you can sign guys after June 1st and all of that. But I think they would want these guys to actually be in camp for them before they make the decision on releasing them. Ethan Posick. If the Browns feel like Luke Whippler can take over at starting center during camp, they will cut Ethan Posick. It would make sense financially. It will also make sense with where they want to go. Luke Whippler's a bigger center. He's taller, stronger. And I think that would be a better fit for this team going forward. Or if the Browns draft somebody like Parker Brailsford and they feel like he's ready in year one, then they'll do a similar thing here. Dustin Hopkins, look, if I'm the Browns, I'm going to sign whoever wins Kicker of the Year out the UFL to kick against Dustin Hopkins. And if Dustin don't thoroughly beat that dude in camp, then we rolling with Kicker of the Year from the UFL. We cutting Dustin Hopkins. And the reason I say Kicker of the Year from the UFL, look at like the last 2 years of UFL. Brandon Aubrey, Birmingham Stallions, turned into the best kicker in the league right now. Right? Last year was a Jake Bates, the kicker out of Michigan, the Michigan Panthers kicker from the UFL. All of a sudden, one of the best kickers in the league. They be developing kickers in the UFL. I don't know why it is that they do that, but you're better off signing a kicker from the UFL than you are drafting one. Do not draft a kicker. Please. Austin Seibert, failure. Zane Gonzalez, failure. K. York, failure. We don't need a fourth one to that list. No more drafting kickers. Okay? Free agency, if it's too expensive, just go snag somebody from the UFL. It's the same thing as kicking in the NFL. Same hash marks, all of that. Just go snag somebody from there. It works out most of the time for a lot of these folks. So that's who I'm bringing in. That's where I'm at with kicker. Let's see. Dalvin Tomlinson. Let's say the Browns get somebody like Mason Graham in the first round. Then Dalvin Tomlinson not going to be very useful for this team going forward. So you just move on from Dalvin Tomlinson. It's really going to matter on what the Browns get in the draft. And also, if they feel like Dalvin Tomlinson can still provide what they feel like he can provide, what he was brought in to provide. So he's somebody who could be moved. And then I want to add 2 bonus things, right? 2 players I think will return for cheap money. Elijah Moore, I think you can get him under $3 million a year. I would do that for if you get him for $3 million, under $3 million a year over 3 years, I would do that. Elijah Moore is 24. He's super young. So there's some upside there. And if you're the Cleveland Browns, you need to take low money investments that have high upside for the next couple of years if you want to be a competitive team, right? Elijah Moore, low money down, high upside. Nick Chubb is another one, right? Low money. He's not going to be expensive at all this free agency. High upside, though, with Nick Chubb. So that's where the Browns are. Those are players who I think will be gone, plus a couple I think will return. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night.